Duet by Zoe Blessing. Chapter 1. Meryl studied her date across the table while he talked. He wasn't bad-looking. Strong jaw, nice teeth. His nose was a little crooked, but it worked for him. She supposed he was attractive enough. "So what kind of music do you like?" he asked. His name was Matt, Matthew Matson. He called himself Matt Squared. "I listen to pretty much everything, but I have a special place in my heart for the classical masters." Musical notations floated through Meryl's mind, and her eyes drifted to an unfocused spot above his shoulder. "It's so beautiful, with all its nuances and moods." "Ah!" Matt nodded vigorously. "Like Jethro Tull?" "No, wait. I think maybe you're more of a Rolling Stones kind of girl." She refocused on him. "No, more like Mozart and Vivaldi." Matt sat back and raised his eyebrows. "Really? Why would anyone want to listen to elevator music? Voluntarily?" Ah, there it was, that thing that definitely did not attract her. She pressed her lips together. Her voice came out clipped when she spoke. "I've never been in a single elevator that played music." "Maybe that's a good thing." He popped a slice of beef into his mouth and chewed. "It all sounds the same to me. Boring." "Boring?" Meryl fantasized about launching across the table and stuffing a napkin into his mouth. "So what do you do, anyway?" Matt asked as he chewed. Meryl set her fork down and leveled her gaze at him. "I play violin in an orchestra." He stopped chewing. "Oh." His eyes dropped to his plate and he had the decency to redden a bit. "Well, I guess that explains the classical music." "I guess it does." She tried to keep the ice out of her tone, but she couldn't help it. Her friends told her it made her seem snobbish, but it always managed to escape from her throat anyway when she was annoyed. The rest of the meal was awkward, after which they said their goodbyes without bothering to make empty promises to call. She gave Matt Squared a point for that, at least. When she got home, she dropped her purse onto the coffee table and collapsed onto the couch. Was she a snob? She never thought so, but there had to be a reason why she'd been on so many first dates and so few second ones. The clomping of heavy boots on hollow floorboards next door interrupted her thoughts. Did Bigfoot move in? It was so nice when the neighboring unit had been vacant, but the past 2 days had been filled with the clunking and scraping of furniture and boxes, and now this. It sounded like 2 sets of feet tramping about. She wondered if she could convince these new neighbors to install carpet. Well-padded carpet. With a sigh, she headed to the balcony to soak up the night air. She leaned against the railing and gazed up at the partial moon in the sky, inhaling deeply the scent of... Was that marijuana? She wrinkled her nose. Were her new neighbors potheads? Not that there was anything wrong with that, but she likened the smell to be about as pleasant as a wet dog. Were they going to be disrupting her pity party every night? She frowned and slammed the sliding door shut, stalking to her bedroom, which thankfully did not share a wall with her clamorous new neighbors. Chapter 2. The following day, Meryl emerged from her front door to retrieve her mail. At the same time, the neighboring door opened and a tall, scruffy man stepped out into the hall. An unlit cigarette dangled from his lips and his unkempt hair poked out from beneath a knitted cap. Her noisy neighbor looked like a dock worker. She was torn between introducing herself, complaining about his heavy footsteps, or admonishing him for smoking indoors. Or smoking at all, for that matter. He saved her the trouble. After patting his pockets, he grunted something and then stomped back inside without ever looking up at her. Later that night, as she relaxed into the couch with a book, she heard music floating through her balcony door. She'd opened it to let the breeze come through, and now she considered closing it again, until she listened more carefully. It was guitar music, acoustic guitar. Someone was playing it. She set her book down and listened. It was good, classical, exquisite fingering, flawless chord progression. This person could play. She closed her eyes and leaned back, letting the notes flow through her body, elevating her to that plane where only she and the music existed. Her fingers twitched for her violin. When the serenade was over, she blinked herself back to reality. How could such sweet aural artistry come from that dock worker? Wait, was she being a snob again? She heard her mother's voice. Music is what separates us from the unwashed masses. Then she heard her favorite violin instructor. Music is the language that binds us all. The next night, after coming home from a performance, she kicked off her shoes, popped open an iced tea, and settled into a lounge chair on the balcony. She was thankful to have found one of the few apartment buildings that separated its balconies with walls. She could never relax out here if she knew some nosy neighbor could just peer over a divider at her. She fixed her eyes upon the stars emerging that night. The air was clear of marijuana stench, and she inhaled deeply. Then the guitar serenade started up again. It was a collection of Spanish tunes this time, and her ears marveled at the intricate strokes and timing required. Pure perfection. She closed her eyes and let herself float away on the musical notations that fluttered past her eyelids in colorful, swirling arches. She wondered briefly if ears could orgasm. An eargasm. Yes, that could be a word, right? A door slammed, startling Meryl out of her cocoon. The guitar strumming stopped, and the neighboring apartment was once again filled with the clomping of heavy footsteps and muffled voices. Well, it was nice while it lasted. Chapter 3. On the third night, Meryl glanced at the time. The guitar serenade usually started at 8 and went on for an hour. She was already out on the balcony, waiting. She smiled when she heard the neighboring patio door open and shut, heard the scrape of a chair, the bump of a guitar against a table, and the strumming began. A flash of recognition made her lean forward in her chair. The opening notes were unmistakable. Her chest tightened as memories of her father flooded her brain. He loved playing Dust in the Wind. She could never get the hang of playing guitar, but when she found a natural ability for violin, she would play duets with him all the time. Meryl glanced into the apartment, at the violin case leaning against a nearby wall. With purposeful strides, she retrieved her violin and returned to the balcony. The haunting guitar notes washed over her as she lifted the instrument to her chin. Then she joined the serenade. 3 seconds in, the strumming stopped. She stopped with it. Moments later, the guitar resumed, and so did she. It stopped again, and Meryl paused, wondering if she'd made a mistake in joining. Maybe this guitar player preferred solitude, and here she was, destroying it. She held her breath, waiting. Maybe she should apologize for intruding. It seemed like the right thing to do. But something about the beauty of the music and the anonymity of night held her tongue. Speaking would break the enchantment, so she remained silent. Before long, the familiar opening notes began playing again, the song restarting from the beginning. She poised her bow over the violin, waited for her opening, and then teased the mournful melody from her strings. The music didn't stop this time. Her instrument's voice weaved with the guitars, and she swayed with it. Eyes closed, she was 12 again, straddling a stool across from where Daddy lounged on the porch swing. His practiced fingers flew over those strings, plucking the tune as if he'd been born doing it. She, with her violin, a bit unsteady, making music with him. Large grins on both their faces. Everything is dust in the wind. When the song ended, she opened her eyes and found her cheeks wet. With a noisy sniffle, she stood and hurried back inside before the ache in her chest could consume her. She didn't wait to see if the guitar continued its music. She stowed her violin and retreated to the safety of her bedroom. Chapter 4. The next day, Meryl realized how much she'd missed playing duets with her father. The way two people could coax two different sets of strings into one harmonious song, it was something she'd never been able to describe or share with anyone since the accident that took her father away. But playing that duet last night, it had unlocked something within her, something she'd carefully placed into a box and hidden in the dark recesses of her mind. She wanted to play like that again, to tap into the music within her soul, to feel again. The symphony was a job, but this was joy. With no concert today, she spent the day doing laundry and picking up groceries. Her dinner consisted of reheated lasagna, and her gaze never strayed far from the clock. She eagerly awaited the time when her mystery guitarist would come out to play. At 7:30, she stopped herself from pacing the apartment by polishing her violin and applying rosin to the bow. She was in the middle of inspecting the bridge when she heard the sound of a sliding door opening and closing. A glance at the clock told her it was time. With eager hands, she carried her violin outside and settled into a chair. Waited. A few notes sounded, then launched into a rousing rondo. She listened for one measure before lifting her violin and harmonizing. This time the music didn't stop. The guitarist kept strumming, and Meryl fiddled with a contentment she hadn't felt in years. They played for 2 hours, never speaking, pausing only to drink water or shake out cramped hands. When it was over, she considered introducing herself. She stared at the wall that separated them. Opened her mouth. Just say hello, she tried to convince herself. But she couldn't. There was a certain freedom to this anonymous arrangement. It felt tenuous, fleeting, and uttering words might shatter it completely. She closed her mouth again. No, she would not speak. She would enjoy whatever this was, for as long as she could. Chapter 5. Over the next 6 days, Meryl joined her guitar-strumming neighbor in a nightly musical routine. Sometimes it was a classic rock medley, other times a journey through Mozart. The guitarist's musical inventory impressed her, but she always kept up, finding ways to weave in her instrument's voice. When her violin spoke, Meryl never had a problem holding up her end of the conversation. On the 7th day, a delay caused the concert hall to run behind schedule. Then the conductor held a meeting to address the entire orchestra. Meryl huffed impatiently, eyeing the advancing clock and tapping her foot in an effort not to bolt out of the concert hall. When she finally burst into her apartment, she could already hear the familiar chords of Hotel California wafting in from the balcony. She dropped her bag to the floor and practically broke down the sliding door. Plunking her violin case down on the table, she blurted, "Sorry I'm late." The music stopped with a discordant noise. Meryl clapped a hand over her mouth. She broke it. She shattered their unspoken alliance. Meryl stood there, frozen, horrified at what she'd just done. The music did not resume, but she didn't hear the guitarist leave either. Flicking the latches open on her case, she lifted the violin out, sat in the chair, and started her rendition of Hotel California. For half a minute, only the lonely notes of her violin filled the air. A slow clench spread in her stomach. It's broken. I broke it. Why did I do that? Please come back, mystery guitarist. I promise not to do it again. As if hearing her thoughts, guitar chords once again floated through the wall. Meryl smiled, relief washing away the knots, and she once again swayed to the music. Chapter 6. Another week of blissful duets flew by. They conversed in ways that no one else did, through rhythm and cadence, through adagios and allegros. Then, yesterday, her guitarist friend showed a playful side. The evening began with the simple pluckings of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, to which Meryl added her own flourishes. This was followed by Old MacDonald, Row, row, row your boat, and other children's favorites. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had so much fun. The following evening, Meryl seasoned chicken legs for dinner, preparing them for the oven. Her mind wandered to the previous night and she smiled yet again. She hadn't felt this light in years. She was looking forward to tonight's duet, as she did every night these days. She found herself wanting to know more about this talented neighbor, wanting to chat, to joke, to actually spend time with this guitarist, whoever he was. For the first time ever, she resented that stucco-covered barrier between them. She shook her head. She was being ridiculous, of course. That wasn't the arrangement. and she still had no face to go with the guitar. A clattering sound next door, followed by muffled shouts, jolted her to attention, and she stared at the adjoining wall. More yelling. It sounded like a man and a woman, maybe more. They sounded angry. Was one of them her silent guitarist? A loud thump shook the wall and made Meryl jump. She quickly washed her hands and rushed to the front door, grabbing her phone along the way. Peeking into the hallway, she strained to hear any indication she should call the police. She heard 2 loud male voices and a woman bellowing in anger, but had trouble making out what the commotion was about. The neighboring door suddenly burst open, and a stocky fellow with a red face she'd never seen before stumbled out. "How many times do I have to tell you, Caleb?" the woman shouted. "This is my home. You don't bring your wasted friends here." The man was quick to retort. "Jesus, Cora, he just needed a place to crash while he dried out." The woman scoffed. "And you saw what he did." "It was an accident. He didn't get out. The man began. "Get out!" the woman shrieked, and hurled something that flew into the hallway. With a noisy huff, the man called Caleb stepped into the hallway. It was the same guy she'd seen the other day with the knitted cap. "Come on, Wally, let's go." "But I didn't mean to," Wally slurred as he lurched back toward the doorway. "I didn't see it." The door slammed in his face. "It doesn't matter. Let's just go." Caleb grasped the other man's elbow and guided him down the hall to the elevator. And then they were gone. Mouth ajar, Meryl came to her senses and went to inspect the object that had sailed into the hallway. It was a plastic bottle of guitar polish. She picked it up and stared at her neighbor's door. She should return the bottle and make sure the occupant was okay. It had absolutely nothing to do with the desire to find out more about her neighbors. None at all. With that thought in mind, she knocked. "Go away, Caleb," came the woman's voice from inside. Meryl was momentarily taken aback by the woman's vehemence. Maybe this was a bad idea. But maybe the woman really needed this polish, like a guitar polishing emergency. She knocked again. "I said go away." "I'm not Caleb," Meryl finally said. Silence. I have your guitar polish?" More silence. Meryl pressed on. "Look, I just want to make sure you're okay. I can call an ambulance if you need help." "I don't need help," the woman's voice rang sharp with resentment. Meryl felt silly talking to a door, but a stubbornness overtook her. What other chance would she get to find out more about these people? More than anything, she wanted to know the identity of her mystery guitarist. It could be Caleb, or Cora, or even Wally. She shuddered. She hoped it wasn't Wally. She stepped closer to the door and planted her feet. "I'm not going away." A beat later, the door flew open and Meryl blinked at the suddenness. The tall woman before her had raven black hair cut into a short bob at her ears. It contrasted with her pale skin and eyes. Those eyes, a mesmerizing light gray blue color, which might have pierced into Meryl if they would actually focus on her. They seemed fixed at a point high above her shoulder. Hi." Meryl smiled up at her, and she saw those gray-blue eyes jerk closer to actual eye contact, though they still focused somewhere near her ear. "I'm Meryl. I live next door." Some of the tension eased from the woman's mouth and her eyes softened. "You?" she said slowly before clearing her throat. "I'm Cora. I'm sorry for the disturbance. I was just worried is all. It sounded a bit violent in here. You're okay, right?" Meryl peered into the apartment past Cora's shoulder. An overturned chair was the only evidence she could see. The tightness returned to the woman's voice. "Yes, I'm fine. I don't need help." "Right, okay." Meryl found the lack of eye contact disconcerting. Was she some kind of shut-in who didn't like talking to people, or even looking at them? "Well, here's your polish." She held out the bottle. Cora didn't take it, and instead held out her hand, her eyes now fixed somewhere on Meryl's neck. Meryl narrowed her eyes, but placed the bottle in Cora's hand. Cora closed her fingers around it, never looking at it. "Thank you," she said, her eyes now dropping to the ground. On a hunch, Meryl waved her hand in front of Cora's face. Cora's eyebrows drew together and she tilted her head, eyes somewhere on the wall behind Meryl. What are you doing? Just stretching? Meryl held her breath, wondering if her hunch was about to make her look insane. She was no yoga expert, but she was pretty sure waving a hand in someone's face was not an actual stretch. Cora nodded and took a step back. Well, thanks again. We'll try to be quieter. Meryl's mouth dropped open. Cora hadn't commented on her obvious lie. Was this woman blind? Wait! Cora paused, a hand already on the door. Meryl hadn't quite thought about what to say next. Was it rude to ask if someone was blind? I'm fixing dinner. Would you like to come over? She winced at the suggestion. She wasn't dressed for company and she hadn't cleaned her apartment yet. Then again, if this woman was blind, it wouldn't matter. Cora's eyes widened a fraction and her breath seemed to pick up pace. No, thank you. I couldn't impose. I wouldn't mind the company, Meryl said. Cora blinked rapidly and began shutting the door. Thank you, but no. Then I'll bring it here. Meryl hated the desperate edge in her voice, but saw her opportunity, closing with that door. She had to find out who her mystery guitarist was. I'd like to know you better. She wondered if that sounded flirtatious, so she added, as a neighbor. Cora's eyes dropped to the floor again and she bit her lip as she considered. Meryl waited. Okay, but... The woman brought her unfocused eyes back up. You should know something. You're blind? Meryl finished for her. Cora ducked her head and seemed to deflate. I guess I don't hide it as well as I think I do. Well, if you must know, you actually had me fooled for a while. Meryl hoped Cora could hear the smile in her voice. The corners of the woman's mouth lifted in a tentative smile. It was the first smile Meryl had seen on her, and it unexpectedly melted something within her. Chapter 7. An hour later, Meryl found herself shuttling plates of food and glasses of wine into Cora's apartment. As she did so, she thought about how to go about asking if this Caleb guy was the guitarist. She'd never heard of a blind guitarist before, so it had to be Caleb. She was surprised to find utensils and napkins already laid out. Cora had also showered and changed out of her loungewear and into a nice pair of jeans and a blouse. She'd have to ask later how she chose clothes, or showered. An image of Cora naked in the shower flashed into her mind and she frowned. Thinking about her neighbor in the shower was inappropriate. Thinking about her female neighbor in the shower. Stop thinking about showers! Thank you for letting me come over, Meryl said, thankful the other woman couldn't see her blushing. It smells delicious. Cora seated herself without any effort. Meryl had been prepared to guide Cora's hand to the back of the chair just like she'd read about online. After the dinner invitation, Meryl had panicked over having dinner with a blind person and then read all sorts of articles about etiquette when interacting with them. But she supposed it was kind of silly since this was Cora's home, and of course she knew where everything was. Cora poked a tentative finger at her plate, locating the chicken, vegetables, and wedge fries. Then she wiped her hand on the napkin and picked up her fork and knife. Meryl picked up her own fork and began babbling to fill the silence. I don't normally cook for people, so I hope it's okay. I'm not a chef or anything, but I'm not exactly helpless in the kitchen, so it's probably okay. At least I hope it is. She winced as she listened to her own gibberish. Cora had already eaten a wedge fry and speared another one. I like these. Oh, good! Meryl felt ridiculously pleased and relieved. She stuck a piece of broccoli into her mouth before she could prattle more. Her eyes roamed around the apartment as she chewed. The walls were understandably bare, the furniture sparse, and everything was impeccably arranged with utilitarian purpose. Then she saw it and stopped chewing. The guitar, lying on a couch, splintered in pieces. She didn't realize she'd gasped until Cora asked, "What's wrong?" The guitar. She swallowed the broccoli. What happened to it? Cora's jaw tightened and she set her fork down. That oaf Wally fell on it. Meryl inhaled sharply, almost feeling physical pain when she imagined the same thing happening to her violin. Oh my God, that's horrible. Cora nodded and bowed her head. I don't know what I'm going to do. Meryl looked at her, really looked at her. The sorrow on her face was as plain as day. It was her guitar. You play? She asked, not quite believing it. Maybe Caleb was teaching her? Yes, Cora said slowly, her brow scrunching slightly in a peculiar expression. The tone of her voice implied Meryl should have known the answer. Not wanting to insult the woman by asking more stupid questions, she said, My dad played guitar. He was amazing. A small smile graced her pretty face. I'm sure he was. A clock somewhere chimed 8 times, and Cora stiffened as if to rise from her seat. A moment later, her shoulders drooped, and she curled her fingers around the fork again. It's strange, she murmured. Meryl tilted her head. What is? It's 8 o'clock, and you're here. Meryl poked a wedge with her fork. Why is that strange? Cora arched an eyebrow at her. You're usually on the other side of that balcony wall. Meryl's fork hung in mid-air. Wait a minute. Her brain felt like it was underwater. You're the guitarist I've been playing with every night? A pink tint covered Cora's pale cheeks. Is that so hard to believe? Meryl's mouth opened and closed without making a sound. She couldn't believe it. This woman, this blind woman, was the guitarist she'd been obsessing over. She finally found her voice. I'm sorry, I'm a bit, well, surprised and stupid. I didn't think that, well, it's just, you're amazing. The color on Cora's face deepened. It really is you? Meryl was pretty sure she was being a tactless ogre, but she couldn't help herself. Without thinking, she reached out and took Cora's hand, which had been resting on the table. She flipped it over to examine it. Thick calluses covered her fingertips, which could only be earned by years of guitar picking. She pressed a finger against a hard callus. My father had hands like these. What happened to him? She released Cora's hand. Car accident. I'm so sorry. Meryl coughed, trying to push back the tears that prickled her eyes. So who's the guy who comes around here all the time? That would be Caleb, my brother. He's a good guy, he just has poor judgment sometimes. And the other guy, Wally? Cora's mouth twisted. A fine example of Kay's poor judgment? Meryl chuckled. After a moment, she said, I can't believe we're actually talking. Cora smiled. Me neither. I mean, we're talking. I've been dreaming about this moment. Cora's head listed to one side. You have? Meryl cleared her throat, mortified to have admitted this aloud, but there was no taking it back now. It's just, well, we play such sweet music together, it's become the highlight of my day, and you're just so amazing. I know I said that already, but it's true. I kind of developed a crush on... She stopped, horrified by her choice of words. What I mean is... Oh, God. She hung her head, her face flaming hot, and mumbled, Shut up, Meryl. Cora leaned forward and reached across the table, laying her hand face down on the surface between them. Meryl stared at it, a practiced guitar-playing hand, and hesitated, trying to figure out what this meant. Tentatively, she slid her own hand across until their fingertips touched. Cora covered Meryl's hand and said softly, I feel the same way. Chapter 8. Meryl felt like she was underwater again. She couldn't have heard right, so she peeked up at her. Which part? What do you mean, which part? Cora asked. Meryl pushed her voice through the anxiety. Which part do you feel the same way about? I kind of babbled a lot of things. All of it. All of it? What did that mean? Meryl began rewinding the last 2 minutes in her head, trying to figure out what all she'd said. All of it, really? Meryl. Cora's voice was soft. It was the first time she'd said her name, and Meryl found she liked the sound of it. You are an incredible violinist. I've never encountered anyone who could keep up with me. Playing with you is the highlight of my day, too, and I've thought about meeting you a lot. A lot? A funny, flip-flopping sensation jiggled Meryl's stomach. Cora smiled. Yes, a lot. And about the crush? Meryl flushed again and pulled her hand away. Oh, God, let's pretend I never said that, okay? I don't want to make things weird. Cora left her hand where it was. I like how candid you are. And it's not weird. It's not? But you're a woman. She didn't say that part aloud, but it hung in the air between them. Cora pressed her lips together and retracted her hand, tapping a finger on the table in thought. Oh no, I offended her. Meryl racked her brain for something appropriate to say and took a sip of wine to bolster herself. Cora spoke first. I like women. A fine mist of red wine spewed from Meryl's lips, and she busied herself with wiping it up. She likes women. Her brain repeated the phrase in slow motion, barely grasping what it meant. Say something. Cora waited, lips slightly parted, scarcely breathing. Say something else. Meryl swam up from her stupor and cleared the remaining wine from her throat. You do? It was far from brilliant, but it was something. Yes, and I like you. Meryl stared, open-mouthed, feeling dim-witted. She tried to say something, she wasn't sure what, but only a strangled squeak came out. Uncertainty clouded Cora's beautiful eyes. I wish I could see your face. I can't tell what you're thinking. I don't know. I think I'm a little confused. Meryl gulped down more wine. I'm not like that. At least, I don't think so. Shit. She got up and began pacing the room. Shit. I don't know. I've only had boyfriends and dated guys, but She ran an agitated hand through her hair. I feel... Cora stayed where she was, her head swiveling to follow the sound of Meryl's rambling. I feel like maybe... Meryl searched for the words to describe the jumbled knot of feelings in her chest. She'd never thought about girls that way before. Then again, she'd never felt such a deep connection to any guy before either. What did it all mean? The sight of the crumpled guitar on the couch caught her attention, and she crouched before it, running a hand along the intact neck, its strings loose and wobbly. I can't believe this happened, she murmured. Your poor guitar. She heard the soft scrape of a chair scooting back, and then Cora was by her side, perched on the edge of the couch. One good thing came out of this. Meryl glanced at her dubiously. You think so? I know so. Cora reached a hand out to hover near Meryl's face. May I? Meryl responded by leaning into her hand. She closed her eyes as Cora's fingers traced her hairline, traveled to her cheek, explored the bridge of her nose, and fluttered over her lips. Her touch was tender and left tingles in their wake. You're beautiful, she breathed. Cora's hand twined into Meryl's hair, and her other hand joined it, running along its length down to Meryl's shoulders. Then they slid up her neck, cupping her face. With gentle pressure, she guided Meryl forward. Cora's head dipped until their lips were mere inches apart. She paused there, her breath caressing Meryl's face, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, Cora closed the gap and their lips met. A soft sigh escaped from Meryl at the sweet pressure of Cora's lips on hers. Holy cow! Holy crap! I can't believe... Meryl's thought stream dissipated like smoke when the kiss deepened. No, not smoke. Steam. So much steam. She pulled away, chest heaving, eyelids heavy, thoughts spiraling. I just kissed a woman, and I liked it. I really liked it. Oh my God, what does this mean? Cora's hands dropped to her shoulders. Are you okay? How do you feel? Meryl wanted to keep kissing, and also run away, but mostly the kissing. Still confused, but I really like you. A nervous laugh bubbled out of her throat. Cora smiled warmly. I really like you too. So, the implications of what this meant began settling onto Meryl like a lead weight. What happens now? What am I? You don't have to label it, Cora whispered. Well, okay, but I'm gonna have questions. Cora's lips curved into a smile. Let's just take it one day at a time. Thank you for listening to Duet by Zoe Blessing. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe so you can discover more.